Hey, nappy friend. Welcome back to our nappy little club. You're home now, and we saved your spot. Tonight we journey back to the American West, but perhaps not the one you're used to picturing. Forget the swaggering gunslingers in dusty saloons. For a moment, we're stepping into the worn-out, government-issue boots of a Buffalo soldier, a man navigating a world of immense beauty and unrelenting hardship. Imagine the endless expanse of the Texas sky, a canvas of deep, sleepy blues and soft, fading oranges. Picture the soft glow of a lantern in a rough-hewn barracks, a single point of light in a vast, quiet darkness. The air smells of dry earth, worn leather, and the faint, comforting scent of horses settling in for the night. You probably wouldn't survive a single afternoon in this heat, wearing a wool uniform. But here, nestled in your favorite spot, you're perfectly safe and relaxed, able to witness the story without the sunburn. So before your eyelids get too heavy, if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, tap that like button and subscribe to keep our sleepy adventures coming. After all, nobody wants to miss out on history, right? We love to know where our stories are. Traveling, so please feel free to comment with where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It makes our little club feel just a bit cozier. So dim your lights, tune into the soft, comforting fan, and ease gently into tonight's journey, because you're now officially in Nappy community. You're not just listening, you're an essential part of our Nappy family, where every night is soothing, special, and yours. You're safe, valued, and always welcome. The rhythmic clatter of the wagon wheels over the rocky trail is the only sound that has felt constant for days. It's a lulling, hypnotic sound that has become the background to every thought. You are Elias Washington, recently assigned corporal, and every jolt of the wagon is a reminder that you are a world away from the humid fields of Georgia you left behind. You shift your weight on the hard wooden bench, the man next to you doing the same in a silent, shared language of discomfort. Out of the dusty haze, it finally appears. Fort Davis. It's less a fort and more a suggestion of one. A collection of adobe and stone buildings baking under a Texas sun that seems to take its job far too seriously. This is your new home. A tiny speck of federal authority in a vast, untamed wilderness. Your first official duty is to draw your uniform and equipment. A clerk with a permanently weary expression hands you the items one by one. The tunic is made of a heavy, dark blue wool. You run your thumb over the fabric. It's coarse and thick, designed, it seems, for a New England winter rather than this scorching desert. You can already feel the phantomage of it on your skin. A quiet, ironic thought drifts through your mind. The Army, in its infinite wisdom, has dressed you for a blizzard in the middle of an oven. You hold up the kepi, the small, round military cap, and wonder how much shade it could possibly offer. It feels more like a target. Later, standing in formation on the parade ground, you feel the uniform's true nature. The sun beats down, and the wool soaks up the heat, wrapping you in a stifling blanket. Sweat trickles down your temples and the back of your neck. You are supposed to be standing at attention, a rigid symbol of discipline, but all you can focus on is the river of perspiration running down your spine. You look at the other men of the 9th Cavalry, all standing just as still, their dark skin glistening. They are all here because of an act of Congress in 1866, the one that established the first all-black regiments in the regular U.S. Army. A chance for a steady wage, for a measure of dignity, for an escape from the sharecropping system that was little more than slavery by another name. Looking at them now, you see 100 different stories, 100 different reasons for trading one hardship for another. Standing together in this absurdly hot clothing, the days begin to blur into a routine governed by the sound of a bugle. The sharp, piercing notes of reveille cut through the pre-dawn chill long before the sun has decided to make an appearance. You learn the rhythm of the fort. Morning drill, where you practice marching in the soft, dusty soil until your legs ache. Then comes stable duty, a never-ending cycle of grooming horses, mucking out stalls, and checking for injuries. The horses are the lifeblood of the cavalry, and their well-being comes before your own. You come to know the smell of hay and horsehide better than you know the smell of your own skin. It's a good, honest smell, a comfort in this strange place. The food is reliably bland. Hardtack biscuits that could stop a bullet. Salted pork and beans. Coffee is the real currency here, the bitter, black liquid that fuels the entire operation. It's a well-known fact among the enlisted men that a cook who can make decent coffee is worth more than a lieutenant who can. Read a map. One of the almost forgotten curiosities of this life is the constant, low-level effort to supplement these rations. You learn from a seasoned sergeant that the small, scruffy rabbits that dart between the rocks at dusk are surprisingly good eating, and that if you're discreet about it, the quartermaster might not notice one less round of ammunition from your allotment. It's a small act of rebellion, a way of asserting a little control over your own existence. You watch the white officers, men who command you, but do not share your barracks or your mess hall. There's a debate you sometimes hear whispered among the men, one that historians a century from now will still be having. Why did these men choose to lead black regiments? Was it a noble, progressive belief in equality, a desire to prove the worth of the black soldier? Or was it simple opportunism? A posting with the 9th or 10th was often seen as a dead end, a less than desirable assignment for officers who couldn't secure a position in a more prestigious white regiment. You look at your own platoon leader, a young lieutenant fresh from West Point with a nervous habit of adjusting his collar. You see the uncertainty in his eyes and wonder which side of that debate he falls on. Does he see you as a man, his equal in all but rank, or does he see you as a tool, a stepping stone in his own career? For now, the question hangs in the hot, dry air between you, unanswered. As you stand your first watch on the perimeter of the fort, looking out into the immense, dark, and silent landscape, you feel the full weight of your decision. The uniform scratches your skin. The hardtack sits heavy in your stomach. But for the first time, you are Corporal Elias Washington, United States Army. You question the wisdom that brought you here, but you don't question the fact that you have arrived. The fort, with its predictable routines and relative safety, quickly becomes a distant memory. Your real job, you learn, happens out here in the unending sea of grass and rock. You are on patrol. This is the core of your existence as a cavalryman, the purpose that justifies the endless drills. The duty sounds important when read from a dispatch, securing the San Antonio-El Paso road, escorting mail coaches, or pursuing hostile bands. But the reality is a slow, plodding rhythm of monotonous days spent in the saddle. You ride for hours. The only sounds the creak of 40 leather saddles, the soft jingle of bridle bits, and the dull, hypnotic thud of hooves on dry earth. It's a sound that could lull a man to sleep, even under the watchful eye of the sun. You and the men of your troop are becoming cartographers of the desolate. You are learning this land not as a beautiful vista, but as a series of crucial, life-sustaining details. A small seep of bitter water here, a patch of decent grazing there, a rocky outcrop that offers meager shade during the brutal midday heat. This is the widely recognized, unglamorous truth of your service. You are not just a soldier. You are an explorer, a road crew, and a security guard, all wrapped in one heavy wool uniform. The West is not being won in glorious charges. It's being tamed, mile by painstaking mile, by men like you. Your platoon leader, Lieutenant Davies, rides at the head of the column. He still looks like he belongs in a classroom back east, his face often flushed with a mixture of sunburn and frustration. He is a man obsessed with schedules and maps, trying to impose military order on a landscape that actively resists it. He carries a helograph, a device that fascinates and irritates the men in equal measure. It's a strange, almost magical piece of equipment, a tripod with a swiveling mirror designed to catch the sun and flash messages in, Morse code to a distant outpost or another patrol. It's a forgotten piece of technology now, but out here, it's a lifeline. You've seen Davies spend an entire afternoon trying to align the mirror just right, cursing under his breath as the sun shifts, his frantic flashes receiving no reply. It's a perfect symbol for his presence here, a desperate attempt to communicate with a world that feels a universal way. One afternoon, the world changes color. The vast blue sky begins to fade, replaced by a sickly yellow-brown haze on the horizon. The wind, which had been a hot, steady breath, picks up, whipping at your clothes and carrying a sharp, gritty scent. A veteran sergeant next to you squints at the horizon and speaks a single, calm word: duster. Soon, the haze becomes a wall, a monstrous churning cloud of earth moving toward you. There is no outrunning it. Lieutenant Davies shouts orders, his voice thin against the rising howl of the wind. Dismount. Hobble the horses. Take cover. The world dissolves into a blinding, suffocating chaos of red dust. You can't see the man next to you. The air is thick and tastes of grit. You pull your bandana up over your nose and mouth, your eyes squeezed shut against the stinging particles. You huddle against your horse, the animal's warmth and solidness a small comfort as the storm rages. The wind shrieks, a physical force that pushes and pulls at you, threatening to tear you away from your anchor. There is no rank in a dust storm, no officer and no private. You are all just men, small and vulnerable, waiting for the sky to stop falling. It ends as suddenly as it began. The wind dies down, and the thick cloud thins into a hazy fog. A red-brown powder covers everything, clinging to your uniform, your skin, your eyelashes. You cough, spitting out a muddy paste. As the men slowly get to their feet, checking on each other and their mounts, Lieutenant Davies' panicked voice cuts through the quiet. The helograph, the mirror case is gone. He stomps over to a young private, a man named Miller, who had been responsible for the pack horse carrying the sensitive equipment. Trooper, where is it? Did you secure the pack correctly? Davies' voice is sharp, accusatory. Miller, still dazed, stammers that he did, that it must have been torn off in the wind. Torn off? Or dropped through sheer negligence? The lieutenant snaps. That is government property, vital equipment. I'll see you court-martialed for this. Here, in the dusty aftermath of the storm, a familiar and ugly tension surfaces. Historians will one day debate the nature of military justice on the frontier, noting the disproportionately high rates of punishment for black soldiers. They will argue over the causes. Was it proof of inherent racism, or simply the result of white officers imposing impossibly strict standards on men they didn't understand? To you, Corporal Washington, the debate is not academic. It is happening right now. You see the fear in Private Miller's eyes and the brittle, misplaced authority in the lieutenant's. You take a step forward, your movements slow and deliberate. Sir, you say, your voice calm and steady. With all respect, we've not yet had a chance to search. The wind took things from all of us. You gesture vaguely to the scattered gear. Permission to organize a search line. We'll find it. Lieutenant Davies turns his glare on you. For a moment, the air is thick with more than just dust. It is a silent battle of wills. Your uniform is the same as his, but it is not. Your rank gives you a voice, but it is a quiet one. His disdain is a palpable thing, a shield against his own incompetence. He sees your quiet confidence not as helpfulness, but as a challenge. Finally, with a curt nod, he says, "Fine, Corporal. You have 5 minutes. Then Trooper Miller is on report." You don't need 5 minutes. Another soldier, a few yards away, calls out, "Got it, sir." The leather case for the mirror is half buried in a fresh drift of sand, snagged on the root of a stubborn yucca plant. It was never on Miller's horse to begin with. The lieutenant walks over, snatches the case from the soldier's hand, and inspects it. He says nothing. There is no apology to Private Miller, no acknowledgement of your intervention. He simply remounts, shouting for the column to reform. As you swing yourself back into the saddle, the familiar creak of leather filling the air, you exchange a long, quiet look with the sergeant. The patrol continues. The rhythmic plodding of the horses resumes its hypnotic beat, but the silence is different now. It is heavier, filled with the unspoken knowledge that the wind and the Ken. Dust are not the only things you have to survive out here. The weary rhythm of the patrol is broken by a lone rider, a silhouette of urgency against the rising sun. He brings new orders. Your troop is to change course, to ride for the Canyon de las Sombras, the Canyon of Shadows. You are to act as an armed escort for a civilian official from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. A man with a stiff collar and a leather satchel full of papers that seem impossibly flimsy in this immense landscape. A meeting has been arranged with a band of Chiricahua Apache, led by a chief named Taza. The name is spoken with a mixture of fear and respect. The mood in the column shifts. The sleepy monotony is gone, replaced by a quiet, sharp-edged alertness. Every rock formation, every dip in the terrain, is now assessed as a potential ambush point that the journey takes you deeper into contested territory. The land becomes more dramatic, with sheer rock walls rising on either side of the trail. The canyon lives up to its name, as the high walls cast long, cool shadows that shift and stretch as the day wears on. It's a place of stark, intimidating beauty. Traveling with your troop are 2 other Apache, men who wear pieces of the army, uniform mixed with their native attire. These are the Indian Scouts, a strange and almost forgotten fixture of the frontier army. They were hired for their unparalleled knowledge of the land and their tracking skills, yet they are viewed with a quiet suspicion by both the soldiers they serve and the people they are often hired to track. You watch them, their eyes constantly, scanning the ridge lines, and wonder about the complicated loyalties that led them to ride under a blue flag. You arrive at the designated meeting place, a small, flat clearing by a creek. It is unnervingly quiet. You dismount and take up positions, forming a loose perimeter as instructed by Lieutenant Davies. The man from the bureau paces nervously, clutching his satchel. And then they are there. They don't arrive with a thunder of hooves or a war cry. They simply emerge from the landscape as if they were always a part of it, their ponies picking their way down a rocky trail with impossible silence. There are perhaps 20 of them, led by an older man with a face that seems carved from the canyon rock itself. This is Taza. His eyes, dark and deep-set, sweep over your troop, lingering for a moment on the blue uniforms and dark faces before settling on the official. The parley begins. The bureau man speaks of treaties, of rations, of reservation boundaries. His voice is loud, full of a hollow bureaucratic certainty. He speaks of peace and government promises, and his words evaporate in the dry air, meaningless. Taza listens patiently, his expression unreadable. When he finally speaks, his voice is low, and his words are carried through a translator. He speaks not of papers and lines on a map, but of his people's hunger, of the buffalo that are gone, of the sacred lands that have been taken. He speaks of promises broken as easily as dry twigs. And as you stand guard, listening to the exchange, a profound and uncomfortable truth begins to settle in your soul. This is the central bitter irony of your life as a soldier. You are a black man, the son of freed slaves, who enlisted to claim a piece of the freedom America promised but so often denied. Now you stand here, an instrument of that same America, imposing its will upon another people who are being stripped of their own freedom. The blue wool of your uniform, once a symbol of escape and opportunity, now feels like a costume in a tragedy you are forced to join. You look into Taz's eyes. You see past the caricature of the hostile savage that the newspapers back east would paint. You see a weary leader, a father, a man burdened with the survival of his people. And in his gaze, you recognize something hauntingly familiar. It's the same quiet, resolute pain you saw in the eyes of your own grandfather, a man who had his name, his family, and his labor stolen from him, yet who refused to be broken. It's the profound grief of fighting for your very existence against a relentless, indifferent force. This is the question historians will forever debate. Did the Buffalo Soldiers feel a kinship with their Native American foes? Did they recognize a shared struggle against the same oppressor? Or was it simply a job, a duty to be performed with the professional distance of a soldier? For you, Elias, standing in this canyon, the debate is over. The kinship is a palpable thing, an ache in your chest. You look at the other men in your troop. Some stare intently at the distant rocks, refusing to watch the scene unfolding. Others have a hard, unreadable mask on their faces, but you know they feel it too. This shared, unspoken understanding that you are all caught in the gears of the same cruel machine. The meeting ends, as these meetings often do, with a fragile, temporary truce. The bureau official seems satisfied, snapping his satchel shut. Taza and his warriors give a slight, dignified nod and then turn, melting back into a canyon as silently as they appeared. They leave a void in the clearing, a silence that is heavier than before. The ride back is somber. The usual quiet chatter between the men is absent. You are left alone with your thoughts. You look down at your hands, gloved in worn leather, resting on the pommel of your saddle. They are the hands of a United States corporal. They are trained to hold a rifle, to follow orders, to enforce the law of the land. But in the shadows of the canyon, you felt for the first time that they were also the hands of an oppressor, complicit in the very kind of injustice you had spent your whole life trying to escape. The moral landscape of your world, once seemingly clear, has become as vast, complicated, and dangerous as the land itself. The years have a way of wearing things down, stones, saddles, and the sharp edges of memory. You are Corporal Elias Washington of the 10th Cavalry now, a seasoned veteran. The man who arrived at Fort Davis, questioning the wisdom of his choice, is gone. In his place is a soldier who knows the language of the wind and the subtle signs of a hidden water source. A man who has faced dust storms and the deep, unsettling silence of a parley in a lonely canyon. But the world you were forged in is vanishing. The last of the Apache bands have been confined to reservations. The great Indian wars are sputtering to an end, fading into history. The forts are quieter, the patrols less frequent. A strange sort of peace has settled over the plains, and with it, a restlessness. You and the other veterans, men who have known nothing but this hard life for decades, are left to wonder, what does a cavalryman do when there is no one left to fight? The answer arrives not with a bugle call, but on thin sheets of paper passed from hand to hand. It comes through the crackle of the telegraph wire, a story from a world away. A ship, the USS Maine, has exploded in a harbor in a place called Cuba. The newspapers, filled with bold, angry headlines, blame Spain. The name hangs in the air of the barracks, tasting of salt and smoke. War. A different kind of war, against a foreign army in a foreign land. A strange excitement ripples through the men. For some, it's a chance for glory, for a conventional fight that feels more real than the campaigns you've waged here at home. For you, it is simply the turning of a page, the start of a chapter you never knew was being written. The order comes, and the 10th Cavalry moves out. The journey itself is a slow farewell to the West. From the window of a rattling train car, you watch the familiar landscape of red earth and sparse scrub give way to the rolling hills and dense green of the American South. The air changes. Dry, clean heat of the plains is replaced by a thick, wet humidity that clings to your skin and uniform. You arrive in Tampa, Florida, the staging ground for the invasion, and the world descends into chaos. The city is a swarm of blue uniformed men. Volunteer regiments, full of loud, boisterous young men with clean boots and romantic ideas about war, crowd the streets. And here, you are confronted with a familiar poison in a new, more potent form. In the relative isolation of the Western forts, you had a certain status. Out there, you were a soldier of the United States. Here, in the heart of the Jim Crow South, you are just a black man. The uniform that gives you pride is an affront to the local authorities. You are told which saloons you cannot enter, which side of the street you must walk on. The irony is a bitter pill to swallow. You are on your way to fight for the liberation of Cubans from Spanish rule, but you must first navigate the indignities of your own country's oppression. You see the readiness and discipline of your fellow Buffalo soldiers, veterans all, and compare it to the disorganized clamor of the volunteers. You know who the better soldiers are, even if the world outside your regiment refuses to see it. You overhear two white officers discussing the deployment. They speak of tropical diseases, yellow fever, malaria, and use a term you've never heard before, immune regiments. The theory, you gather, is that black men are naturally more resistant to the fevers of the jungle. It is a strange, unsettling thought. Your very blood and biology are being weaponized, your perceived racial trait becoming a strategic advantage. Historians will later debate this, but you know in your gut it's just another way of seeing you as different. As other. This sense of being other fuels a quiet, powerful hope that binds you and your comrades. You don't speak of it openly, but it's there in the determined set of your jaws and the pride in your posture. This is a debate for the future, for the academics in their comfortable libraries. Did you fight for pure patriotism, or was it something more? You know the answer. You are fighting to prove yourselves on a world stage. You are fighting with the desperate hope that courage under fire in Cuba might purchase a bit more freedom, a bit more respect back home. Perhaps if you are heroes over there, they will see you as men over here. The sea voyage is a new kind of misery. You are crammed into the dark, sweltering hold of a transport ship. For a man accustomed to the endless, stable horizon of the plains, the constant rolling of the ocean is a disorienting torment. And then, one morning, you are there, Cuba. As you step off the gangplank, the air hits you like a physical blow. It is a wall of heat and humidity so thick you feel like you could drink it. The smells are overwhelming, the sweet scent of unfamiliar blossoms mixed with the odor of damp earth and decay. The sounds are a constant, buzzing, chirping chorus from a billion unseen insects and birds. The fine red dust of Texas is a distant dream, replaced by slick, black mud that pulls at your boots. Your wool uniform, always a burden, is now an instrument of pure torture. You and your troop make camp. Near the landing site at Daiquiri, you stand on foreign soil, a jungle teeming with life at your back and the vast ocean before you. You look at the familiar faces of your brothers in arms, veterans who can read the desert like a book, but are now strangers in this lush, green world. The past decade of your life on the plains feels like another lifetime, another man's story. You have left the dust of the West behind, trading it for the dense, suffocating heat of the Caribbean jungle, entirely unaware that you are standing on the very edge of history. The humid Cuban night gives way to a suffocatingly hot morning on July 1st, 1898. The air is unnervingly still, thick with the scent of damp earth and the palpable hum of tension. You and the 10th Cavalry are positioned in the dense foliage at the base of a series of rolling hills. Somewhere up there, shrouded in the morning mist, are the Spanish forces, dug into blockhouses and trenches along the San Juan Heights. Your objective is the port city of Santiago, but to get there, you must first take this high ground. The waiting is a unique form of torment. You perform the quiet, meditative rituals of a soldier before battle, meticulously wiping down your Springfield rifle, checking the action, running a thumb over the brass casings of the cartridges in your bandolier. You can hear the enemy before you can see them. It's a sharp, distinctive crack, like a whip snapping, followed by a faint, buzzing hiss as a bullet cuts through the leaves above your head. It's the sound of a Spanish Mauser. It's a modern, superior rifle that uses smokeless powder, a frustratingly effective piece of technology. The Spanish can fire at you from well-hidden positions, their locations given away by nothing. Your own rifle, the Krag Jurgensen, is reliable, but it's a step behind. Every shot you fire will produce a small puff of white smoke, a tiny cloud. That says, "Here I am." It's a fact you try not to dwell on. Hours crawl by. The American assault has stalled before it has truly begun. The plan is chaotic, the command structure confused. You are caught in a lethal crossfire, particularly from what you will later learn is Kettle Hill. Men are being hit without ever having seen the enemy. The volunteer regiments, including Colonel Teddy Roosevelt's famous Rough Riders, are pinned down in the tall, sharp-edged guinea grass, their enthusiasm proving to be poor armor against entrenched riflemen. You watch as good men fall, and a grim, frustrating realization settles in. To stay here is to die. This is the moment that popular history often gets wrong, the moment that will be debated by historians for a century. The popular myth will feature a bombastic Roosevelt on horseback, single-handedly inspiring the charge. But you are here, and you see the truth. The truth is quieter, born of professional desperation. You see it in the eyes of the veteran sergeants of the 10th, men who survived the Apache Wars and 100 hostile skirmishes. They know a losing position when they see one. An order doesn't come from the top, but a consensus rises from the ranks. A lieutenant from another troop, Jules Garesh Ord, stands up and points with his sword. "Come on," he yells. "Let's get him." It's all the permission you need. It's not a grand, unified charge. It's a series of desperate individual decisions to advance. You get up from your meager cover, your heart pounding a frantic rhythm against your ribs, and you run. You run low to the ground, your lungs burning, for 20 yards before diving. Back into the grass. The air is alive with the sound of those Mauser rounds, a deadly, invisible hornet's nest. You get up and run again. To your left and right, your brothers of the 10th are doing the same. You are not charging a fortress. You are methodically, professionally, advancing under fire, using every bit of cover the landscape offers. Your movement breaks the spell of paralysis that has gripped the American line. As you advance, you draw fire, but you also create an opportunity. You see the Rough Riders, some still lying flat, see you moving forward. Your progress shauns and inspires them into action. You see Colonel Roosevelt finally able to urge his men forward, his horse a conspicuous target. But it is the steady, disciplined advance of your veteran unit that is clearing the path, absorbing the fire, and showing the volunteers how it is done. Many eyewitnesses, Roosevelt included in his early reports, would later state that the charge of the 10th Cavalry saved his regiment from annihilation. You are no longer thinking, just doing. The world shrinks to the space directly in front of. You run, crawl, fire a smoky shot, toward the enemy trenches and run again. You feel a sting on your arm, a hot burn, and look down to see your sleeve torn and bloody. A graze, nothing more. You barely register it. The crest of Kettle Hill is getting closer. The final push is a blur of shouting and ragged breathing. You scramble over the top of the ridge alongside a handful of your comrades and a few Rough Riders, a strange mix of black veterans and white Ivy Leaguers. For a moment, there is only the sound of your own gasping breaths and the pounding in your ears. You have taken the hill. You immediately drop to your stomach and begin returning fire on the retreating Spanish soldiers as they flee toward the main blockhouse on the adjacent hill, the true San Juan Hill. The fight is not over, not by a long shot. You take a precious swig from your canteen, the lukewarm water tasting like the finest wine. A Rough Rider you've never seen before, his face smudged with dirt and powder, gives you a frantic, grateful grin and a thumbs up. In this brief, bloody moment of shared victory, on this small patch of conquered ground, you are not a black soldier or a white volunteer. You are simply an American soldier. You look back down the slope at the cost of this small victory laid. Bare in the grass, you know what you did. You know what the 10th did. The question that hangs in the powder-choked air is, will anyone else remember it this way? Years have passed since the fevered dreams of Cuba and the cold splash of reality back home. You are stationed out west again, but the West itself seems to have aged with you. The forts are quieter. The urgency has faded, replaced by the steady, predictable rhythm of a peacetime army. The world is tipping over into a new century, and you can feel the change in the air, a sense of endings and uncertain beginnings. Tonight, a bitter wind rattles the windows of the barracks, a familiar sound that carries you back through time, far from the humid jungles of the Caribbean and the sting of forgotten glory. The biting cold of the plains has a way of clarifying, things of stripping away illusions. You sit on the edge of your cot, the rough wool of your blanket pulled around your shoulders, methodically polishing a piece of your leather tack. The familiar rhythmic motion of your hands is meditative, opening a space for memory to drift in. The cold air, the quiet companionship of the sleeping men around you, the dim lantern light, it all conspires to pull you back to the very beginning, to the reason you first chose this life. You think about the medal from the Spanish War, tucked away in a small wooden box beneath your cot. It's a complicated object, representing both your courage and your country's convenient amnesia. And it makes you wonder, with a tired sort of curiosity, what that young man from Georgia would think of the man you've become. You let your mind drift back to the thick, oppressive humidity of the post-Reconstruction South. You remember the feeling of the damp, red earth under your bare feet. You remember the smell of pine needles and the endless green rows of cotton that had to be picked, your hands raw and stained. Life then was a cycle of debt and dependence, a system called sharecropping that felt perilously close to the slavery. Your parents had endured. You worked a piece of land you would never own for a share of a crop that, after the landowner took his portion for seed and supplies and rent, left you with just enough to owe him again next year. It was a cage without bars, a prison of crushing poverty and relentless indignity. The real chains were not economic. They were the daily humiliations. The way you had to step off the sidewalk when a white person approached. The way you could be called boy by a child half your age. The quiet, simmering fear that was a constant companion. The knowledge that a wrong word or a sideways glance could bring devastating consequences. You remember the day the idea of escape first took root. You saw a recruitment poster, a small, faded notice tacked to a post. It promised adventure, a steady wage, and most incredibly, an education. This was a powerful lure, a curiosity of the service that drew thousands of illiterate men like yourself. The Army, through its post chaplains, offered one of the only reliable ways for a black man to learn to read and write. But it was the image that caught you. A drawing of a black man in a crisp blue uniform, sitting tall on a horse. He looked proud. He looked free. You later heard a recruiter speak of the 9th and 10th Cavalry, regiments of men who looked like you, serving as soldiers of the United States on the frontier. The pay he mentioned, around $20 a month for a corporal, was a fortune. It was more cash than you might see in a year of backbreaking labor in the fields. But as you stood there, listening to the murmurs of the other young men, you knew it was about more than the $20. That money was just the key. The door it unlocked was the one to your own manhood. This is the debate historians will have, sitting in their comfortable chairs. Was the uniform a cloak of manhood, a shield of citizenship? For you, in that moment, it was not a debate. It was a lifeline. It was the promise of trading the name boy for the title trooper or corporal. It was the chance to stand on your own 2 feet, to be subject to the discipline of the U.S. Army instead of the whims of a resentful landowner. It was an assertion that you were a man, willing to risk your life in service to a country that barely acknowledged your humanity in the desperate hope that it might one day be forced to. The decision was a quiet rebellion. It was turning your back on the only life you had ever known, on the suffocating certainty of the cotton fields, for a future that was entirely unknown, but was, at the very least, your own choice. Back in the cold barracks, you pause your polishing. The leather is smooth and supple under your fingers. You look at your hands, calloused and scarred from years of holding reins and rifles, not cotton bowls. Was it worth it? The question is as vast and empty as the plains outside. The racism didn't vanish when you put on the uniform. It just changed its shape. The erasure of your regiment's heroism in Cuba was a betrayal that still stings. And yet, you are not that boy in Georgia anymore. You have seen the country. You have learned to read and write in the chaplain's school. You have earned the respect of the men you command and the grudging acknowledgement of the officers you serve. You have a trade. You have a brotherhood. You have a pension to look forward to. The uniform did not make you a citizen in the eyes of many, but it gave you the space to forge your own identity, to build a life with honor. The $20 a month was what the Army paid you. What you bought with your service, what you truly sought, was a measure of dignity. And that you reflect as you finally set the leather aside and prepare for another cold night's sleep, was a price well worth paying. The barracks at night is a world unto itself, a sanctuary sealed against the biting wind and the watchful eyes of the officers. The air is warm, thick with the smell of old wood leather soap and the faint, sweet aroma of pipe tobacco from Sergeant Owen, who sits near the stove carving a piece of wood. A low murmur of conversation provides a steady, soothing hum, punctuated by the soft slap of cards on a wooden crate and the quiet scratching of a pen as a trooper painstakingly writes a letter home. This is the heart of the regiment, the place where the official rules of the Army give way to the unwritten codes of the 10th Cavalry. These codes are the invisible sinews that hold you all together, a language of survival learned through shared experience. You've come to understand that. The most important communication in the troop is silent. It's a language of glances, gestures, and strategic silence. You can recall a dozen times on patrol when a subtle, almost imperceptible shake of the head from Sergeant Bowen saved you from offering a piece of advice that the young Lieutenant Davies, in his fragile pride, would have taken as criticism. You've seen him calm a tense situation with a raised hand, a gesture that says, "I have this," to his fellow NCOs, allowing him to handle a volatile trooper before an officer needs to get involved. This silent conversation is a constant, subtle dance of navigating authority while protecting your own. It is the first and most important rule of the code. We handle our own business. The veterans, The old-timers, who have seen a decade or more of service, are the keepers of this code. They take the new recruits, the fish, under their wing. A new trooper fresh from the east might think the Army's manual on horse care is sufficient. A veteran will take him aside and show him the real way to check for hoof rot, how to spot the early signs of colic, not just to pass inspection, but because that horse is the man's life out on the plains. They teach you how to supplement your rations without getting caught, how to mend a uniform so the stitches are invisible, how to read the subtle shifts in the clouds that foretell a storm. This mentorship is the lifeblood of the regiment. It is this powerful sense of brotherhood you believe that explains a widely recognized fact about your regiments. The Buffalo Soldiers have the lowest desertion rate in the entire frontier army. In a life this hard, this filled with prejudice and peril, it seems a paradox. But where would a man even desert to? Back to the crushing poverty of the South? Into a frontier society that is often just as hostile? Here, you have a home. You have a purpose. You have food, a bed, and most importantly, you have your brothers. You don't desert your family. One of the most sacred parts of this internal world is the memory of the chaplain school. This is a point of academic debate for outsiders. How effective was the relationship between the white officers and black enlisted men? You've seen the bad ones, like Davies, but you also remember Captain Armistead, your first company commander, a fair and decent man who trusted his sergeants completely. And you remember the chaplain. He was a white officer, yes, but in the evenings, he became something more. After the official duties of the day were done, he would light a few extra lanterns in the mess hall for any man who wished to learn. This wasn't a secret, exactly, but it felt like a private, almost sacred, ritual. You remember sitting at that long wooden table as a young private, your fingers clumsy around a piece of chalk, a slate board on your lap. You remember the chaplain's patient voice guiding you through the alphabet, the frustration of forming the letters, and then the sudden, brilliant flash of understanding as the symbols resolved into words. The proudest moment of your life was not charging up Kettle Hill. It was the first time you successfully wrote your own name, Elias Washington. It was a declaration of existence, a skill that no one could ever take from you. That was the chaplain's gift. He gave you the tools to read the newspapers that would one day betray you, but he also gave you the dignity of literacy. That you watch, Sergeant. Owen now, as he calls over a young trooper who had a run-in with Lieutenant Davies earlier over a poorly cleaned rifle. The lieutenant had humiliated the boy in front of the platoon. Owen doesn't raise his voice. He simply has the trooper bring him the rifle. The Army sees the outside. Owen says quietly, his voice a low rumble. We take care of the inside. He points to a spot of grime the boy missed in the firing mechanism. This is what gets you killed. Not the lieutenants shouting. This. The lesson is firm, but not cruel. It's another rule of the code. You correct your brother's mistakes yourself, with dignity, so they learn the right way, not just the Army's way. This is the spirit of the uniform. It's more than the wool and the brass buttons. It's this complex, unwritten constitution of mutual respect, shared knowledge, and fierce, protective pride. It's the silent glance, the after-hours school, the quiet correction. It is a culture built to withstand not only the hardships of the frontier, but the corrosive pressure of a society that wished you to fail. Here, in the warm, smoky air of the barracks, you do not fail. You endure together. The past has a strong grip on you these days. It comes to you in the quiet moments, like now, as you stand watch on the perimeter of the fort in the fading afternoon light. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the vast sky in hues of deep, orange and sleepy purple. A new recruit, barely 20 years old and full of questions, had asked you earlier in the day, his voice full of genuine curiosity. Corporal, why do they call us Buffalo Soldiers? The question was simple, but the answer is a story, a legend that you have to live inside to truly understand. It takes you back to your first years on the plains, when the land was still fiercely contested and your uniform was still new and stiff. You remember being a young trooper on a long patrol deep in Cheyenne territory. The tension was a constant. Companion, a prickling on the back of your neck. You had engaged in a brief, frantic skirmish a few days prior. A chaotic dance of horses and smoke and fear. Now, you were part of an escort for a captain meeting with a small group of Cheyenne leaders to de-escalate the conflict. You stood at a distance, watching the parley, when you first heard the words from the scout acting as a translator. He was, pointing toward your troop, the Mahishtavuda, the Buffalo Soldiers. The name hung in the air, strange and unfamiliar. Back in the barracks that night, the words were passed around. Buffalo Soldiers. Was it an insult? A mockery of your dark skin, your tightly curled hair? Some of the younger men bristled at it, ready to take offense. It was a seasoned sergeant, a man who had been with the 10th since its founding, who silenced them. He had gathered the story from the scouts. "Don't be fools," he had said, his voice low and gravelly. "This ain't a name from some white man looking down his nose at you. This is a warrior's name." He explained what the scouts had told him. "The Cheyenne," he said, "saw two things in you. They saw your hair, dark and thick, which reminded them of the shaggy, powerful mane of a buffalo. But more than that, they saw how you fought. In the skirmish, you had been outnumbered, but you did not break. You did not run. You held your ground, fighting with a fierce, stubborn courage that they respected. You fought," they said, "like a cornered buffalo, an animal that refuses to die, an animal that is most dangerous when wounded." Historians would later debate the exact origin, whether it was the Cheyenne or the Comanche, the hair or the fighting spirit. But for you and the men in that moment, the sergeant's explanation became gospel. He went on to explain something deeper, a piece of eccentric but vital cultural knowledge that the scouts had shared. To the Plains tribes, the buffalo was not just an animal. It was sacred. It was the center of their universe, the provider of food, shelter, clothing, and spiritual sustenance. To be associated with this powerful, sacred animal was not an insult. It was a profound sign of respect, an honor bestowed by an adversary. In that moment, something shifted in the barracks. The uncertainty vanished, replaced by a slow-burning pride. The name wasn't a brand placed upon you by your employer. It wasn't Negro cavalry or colored troops, the sterile, bureaucratic terms of the army. This was a name you had earned. It was a name given to you by the very men you were fighting, a name born of their respect for your tenacity. You started to use it yourselves, at first with a touch of irony, then with an unshakable pride. "Come on, you Buffalo Soldiers, let's get this done." It became your identity, a badge of honor that set you apart. You were not just any soldiers, you were the Buffalo Soldiers. The name became a quiet act of rebellion. It was yours. You began to see small carvings of buffalo appearing, scratched into the stocks of rifles or the leather of a saddlebag. The image of the buffalo became your unofficial crest, a symbol of everything you were, strong, resilient, stubborn, and deeply connected to the wild frontier you called home. Looking out at the darkening plains now, you smiled to yourself. You are Corporal Elias Washington. Yes, but that is the name the Army gave you. Your true name, the one that tells the story of your brotherhood, of your spirit, is Buffalo Soldier. It's a name that encompasses the central paradox of your existence. A black man in a white man's army, fighting against a red man for control of the land, and in the process, being given your identity by your foe. It was a name you took, polished, and made your own, transforming it from a simple observation into a legend. You warred into the jungles of Cuba, and you brought it back, a name that the newspapers, in their rush to praise Roosevelt, could never understand and therefore could never take away. It remains your most sacred possession, a testament to the fact that even when the world tries to define you, true identity is forged in the fire and named by those who have seen you fight. Your world runs on a clockwork of brass and breath. It is a life measured out in bugle calls, each note a command, a transition, a promise of order in a land defined by chaos. The day begins with the sharp, insistent notes of reveille, cutting through the pre-dawn chill and pulling you from the shallow sleep of the barracks. Then comes mess call for a breakfast of coffee and hardtack, followed by the steady, rhythmic cadence of morning drill on the parade ground. Stable call summons you to the familiar, comforting smell of horses and hay. Fatigue call assigns the day's labor. Every hour is accounted for, every action prescribed. The day ends as it began, with the mournful, lyrical notes of tattoo, a warning to return to quarters, and finally, the soft, melancholic melody of taps, a final, gentle command to extinguish the lights and let the vast, silent darkness of the day. Planes envelop the fort. This routine, this predictable rhythm, is the very bedrock of your existence. Today, as you're returning from a training exercise, your movements cinched with the half-dozen other men in your detail, you see them. On the dusty trail that skirts the edge of the military reservation, a small group of cowboys is pushing. A herd of cattle northward. They are a stark contrast to everything you are. Their clothes are a motley collection of worn denim and leather, covered in a uniform layer of dust that is entirely their own, not government issue. Their hats are shaped by personal preference, not regulation. They slouch in their saddles with a weary ease that is the opposite of the rigid, upright posture drilled into you. You stop for a moment, watching them. They are the living embodiment of the great American myth of freedom. They answer to no bugle, stand for no inspections. Their schedule is dictated by the sun and the needs of their herd. Their trail is the one they choose to blaze. You imagine their lives, sleeping under a blanket of brilliant stars, the silence broken only by the crackle of a campfire and the lowing of cattle. No sergeant to shout at them, no officer to scrutinize their every move. It is a powerful, romantic image, and you feel a fleeting pang of something like envy for that untethered existence. But you are a soldier, a man trained to analyze and observe, and as you watch them, your disciplined mind begins to pick apart the myth. Their freedom, from this vantage point, starts to look a lot like vulnerability. You see the frayed edges of their clothes, the gaunt look on one young man's face. Who provides their next meal if the trail runs out of game? Who pays their wages if the cattle baron they work for decides to cheat them at the end of a long drive? There is no pension waiting for a cowboy with a broken leg, no army surgeon to stitch a wound. Their independence is absolute, but so is their isolation. You think of the small comforts your structured life provides. You think of the company fund, a curious and unique army institution. Your troop maintains a small garden behind the mess hall, and the money earned from selling the surplus vegetables goes into a shared fund. That fund is used to buy better food, to supplement the bland government rations with fresh potatoes, onions, and sometimes even butter. Tonight's stew will be thick and savory because of that organized, communal effort. You doubt the cowboys, for all their freedom, will eat as well as you will tonight. Historians will one day debate the romantic myth of the cowboy versus the brutal reality of his life. But you are conducting your own quiet analysis right here on the trail. The structure you live within, the routine that can sometimes feel confining, is also a shield. It is a fortress. The Army's clockwork provides a steady paycheck, rain or shine. It provides medical care, a roof over your head, and a clear path for advancement. It provides a brotherhood, a web of support that those lonely men on the trail will never know. Their freedom is the freedom to prosper, but it is also the freedom to starve. Your lack of freedom is the price you pay for security, for a place, in a world that is actively hostile to a man with your skin color. Outside the fort's walls, you are a target of prejudice. Inside, you are Corporal Washington, a respected non-commissioned officer. The cowboys are now just dusty specks on the horizon, slowly disappearing into the vastness that they call home. You are left with the profound realization that freedom is a matter of perspective. What looks like a cage from the outside can feel like a sanctuary from within. The discipline you once chafed against has become a source of strength, the predictable routine a quiet comfort. You have traded the illusion of absolute freedom for the reality of a life with dignity and a future you can count on. You turn your back on the endless trail and head toward the familiar, orderly geometry of the fort. The bugler is taking his position for the next call. You know exactly what it will be. And in that certainty, you find your own kind of peace, your own kind of freedom. Leave from the fort is a rare commodity, and you spend it in the nearest approximation of civilization, a dusty, raucous frontier town called Liberty. The name is an irony you've had years to appreciate. Liberty is a single wide street flanked by wooden storefronts with false fronts that try to make them look grander than they are. The air is a symphony of discordant sounds, a tinny piano from a saloon, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the shouts of teamsters urging their mules forward. As you walk down the street in your clean, pressed blue uniform, you are an object of curiosity and, in some eyes, suspicion. You are a symbol of federal order in a place that thrives on a precarious, individualistic chaos. You decide to seek a quiet drink, avoiding the larger saloons where your presence would be an unwelcome provocation. You find a smaller, darker establishment on a side street, a place that seems to cater to a clientele less concerned with social niceties. The air inside is cool and smells of stale beer and sawdust. As your eyes adjust to the dim light, you see a sight that makes you pause. In a corner, alone at a small table, is a black man. He is not a soldier, not a porter, not any of the roles you are used to seeing men like yourself occupy. He is unmistakably a cowboy. He wears worn leather chaps over his denim trousers, scuffed boots with spurs that gently chime when he moves, and a wide-brimmed hat resting on the table next to his glass. He sees you, and a look of mutual recognition passes between you. It is the silent acknowledgement of two men who are anomalies in this world, two answers to a question no one is asking. You give him a slight nod, and he gestures to the empty chair at his table. You buy a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses and sit down. His name is Isaac, and his handshake is firm, his hand calloused in a way that is different from your own. His calluses are from ropes and reins, yours from a rifle stock and a shovel dot as you talk. The romantic image of the free-roaming cowboy you entertained back at the fort crumbles into dust. You learn that the history books will get it wrong, that as many as 1 in 4 men who rode these trails were black like him. Many, he tells you, were former slaves from Texas and the Deep South, men who brought with them an intimate generational knowledge of handling horses and cattle. He is one of them. They needed the skill, Isaac says with a wry, humorless smile. And a man with my skill could get a job. Didn't mean he'd get respected. He tells you about his life, and it is not a life of freedom, but one of grueling dangers. Labor for low pay. He is a wrangler, he explains, responsible for the remuda, the herd of spare horses on a long cattle drive. It's a position of immense responsibility, a detail that history will often forget. He speaks of the terror of a midnight stampede in a thunderstorm, the bone-deep chill of sleeping on wet ground for weeks on end, and the mind-numbing boredom of watching cows walk for 1,000 miles. Here, in this dim saloon, you enter into a quiet debate that future historians will engage in. Was the trail a place of racial equality, a meritocracy where skill was all that mattered? On the trail, Isaac says, pouring another drink, what you can do with a horse or a rope matters. A spooked herd doesn't care what color the man calming. It is. I've worked with white boys who respected my work. He pauses, looking into his glass. But the trail always ends in a town, and in town, you're just another black man. You get paid less. You can be the best hand on the drive, but you'll never be the trail boss. The respect has its limits. It ends where the trail does. You share your own stories. You speak of the discipline of the army, the racism of Lieutenant Davies, the sting of being erased from the newspapers after Cuba. He listens intently, nodding in understanding. You both came west seeking something more than the life the South offered you. You chose the structure of the army. He chose the supposed freedom of the open range. Yet you have both found the same. Truth. The West is a hard, unforgiving land that makes few promises and keeps even fewer. You both serve the interests of powerful white men, you, the government. He, the cattle barons. You are two sides of the same tarnished coin, two missing faces from the grand portrait of the American West that is being painted in the popular imagination. Your shared experience creates a strange, powerful bond. His life is not better or worse than yours, just different. The hardships are the same, merely wearing different clothes. His enemy is a blizzard or a broken leg 100 miles from help. Yours is an ambush or a burst of prejudice from a superior. Officer, you are both just trying to build a life, to earn a wage, to hold on to your dignity in a world that seems designed to strip it from you. As you stand to leave, you shake his hand again. No grand words are necessary. In this brief encounter, you have seen the hidden truth of the frontier. It is not a story of heroic white cowboys and stoic blue-coated soldiers. It is a story of struggle, shared by many faces, many colors, all, seeking a small piece of a promise in a vast and difficult land. Walking back out into the fading light of liberty, you realize the line between the soldier and the cowboy is not nearly as sharp as you once thought. It is a blurred line drawn in the same dust by men walking two different paths toward the same uncertain horizon. 30 years. The thought settles on you, not with the weight of age, but with the smooth, worn feel of a river stone. You are First Sergeant Elias Washington now, and the fort you stand in is not the same collection of adobe and raw lumber you first saw as a young man. There are more stone buildings now, a telegraph wire that hums with messages from a world that has grown smaller and faster, and the railroad runs much closer than it used to. The frontier you tamed has, in turn, been tamed by time. You stand near the stables at sunset, the familiar, comforting smells of horse and hay, a constant thread running through the tapestry of your life. And you let your mind drift back over the long trail you've ridden. You see the face of the young man from Georgia, full of fear and a desperate hope, choosing a life in a blue wool uniform as an escape. You feel the grit of the plains, the oppressive sun, and the quiet, simmering tension with men like Lieutenant Davies. You see the haunted eyes of the Apache chief, Taza, a memory that still brings a complicated ache to your heart, a reminder that you were a gear in a great, grinding machine of conquest, even as you fought for your own place within it. The humid jungles of Cuba, the chaotic charge up Kettle Hill, the pride of victory followed so swiftly by the bitter sting of erasure. It all feels like a story you once read about a different man. You reflect on the brotherhood that was your true shield, the quiet lessons from Sergeant Bowen, the pride of learning to write your name in the chaplain's lamplight, the fierce, unspoken loyalty that kept your desertion rates the lowest in the Army. You remember the birth of your name, Buffalo Soldier, a title given by a foe, but reforged in pride into a crest of honor. And you think of Isaac, The black cowboy you met in that dusty saloon, his face a mirror, showing you a different path through the same wilderness. That conversation has stayed with you through all the intervening years. It was the final piece of the puzzle of your life. Before meeting him, you saw the world as a series of contrasts. The disciplined soldier versus the free cowboy, the secure fort versus the endless trail. But Isaac showed you that you were not opposites. You were brothers in a shared struggle. Two sides of the same tarnished American coin. The West was the Great Forge, a place of both dazzling promise and heartbreaking perdition. It drew men like you and him, men on the margins, with the lure of a new start. You both came seeking a measure of freedom and dignity that the old world denied you. In response to its challenge, you chose the path of structure. You submitted to the bugle's call in exchange for a steady wage, medical care, a pension, and the powerful solidarity of the regiment. Isaac chose the path of individual risk. He embraced the chaos of the open range in exchange for the illusion of being his own master. Both paths required a courage and a resilience that the dime novels and the newspapers could never truly capture. Both were journeys fraught with hardship, loneliness, and the constant, wearying presence of racial prejudice. You've heard stories of men like Charles Young, the West Point graduate who rose through the ranks of the 10th Cavalry with sheer brilliance and determination, a beacon of what a black man could achieve against impossible odds. His career, and your own, stands as a testament to the legacy you all built. This is the final, complex truth that historians will debate. You were, undeniably, agents of an expansionist nation. But you were also pioneers of a different sort. In every fort you garrisoned, every trail you mapped, every battle you fought with honor, you were carving out a space for black men in the story of America. You proved your worth not just as soldiers, but as men, laying a foundation of service and sacrifice for future generations to build upon. The last, soft notes of taps begin to drift across the parade ground, a gentle, melancholic lullaby for the sleeping fort. It is the sound that has bookended tens of thousands of your days. Soon, your 30 years of service will be complete. You will take off the uniform for the last time. What awaits you is an uncertain peace, a world without, a bugle to guide it. But you are not afraid. You are at peace with the man you have become and the life you have chosen. You were a soldier. You were a husband to the army, a brother to the men you led, and a son of the harsh, beautiful, and unforgiving West. You and the cowboy were just two different ways of surviving America, two different ways of fighting for a future on a frontier that was as much a state of mind as it was a place on a map. The final, gentle notes of the bugle fade into the vast, quiet stillness of the night. The melody hangs in the cool, dry air for just a moment longer, a soft blanket settling over the fort, and then it is gone, leaving only the peaceful sound of a soft, whispering breeze. Your journey with Elias is now complete. His long day of reflection is over, and a well-earned sense of peace has settled deep within his soul, a quiet comfort that now extends to you. Feel that same sense of calm settling over you now. Let the story of his life, with all its hardships and its honor, gently recede into the soft, quiet corners of your mind. There are no more battles to be fought, no more dusty trails to be ridden, no more bugle calls to answer. There is only this present moment of deep, restful quiet. The weight of the day, any worries or thoughts that may be lingering, can now be set aside. Imagine placing them in a small wooden box, like the one where Elias kept his medal, and closing the lid. They will be there tomorrow if you need them. But for now, the night is for rest. Your breathing is slow, and even a gentle, rhythmic tide rising and falling in perfect harmony with the quiet of the room. Every breath in brings a feeling of calm and serenity. Every breath out releases any remaining tension, letting it drift away far, far away into the vast, dark sky. The space around you is safe and secure, a quiet harbor where you can let go of everything and just be. The gentle hum of a fan, the quiet rustle of your blankets. These are the only sounds now, the soft and soothing soundtrack to your descent into a deep and peaceful slumber. You have reached the end of this long journey, and now all that is left to do is rest, to float gently on the calm, quiet waters of sleep, feeling safe, feeling comfortable, feeling completely at peace. The story is over, and a gentle, quiet, calm remains. You've reached the end of another cozy nappy tale. Sleep well, and remember, you're always welcome here. Sweet dreams, nappy friend.